very much to Meredith and Daney. We come now to the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board end of year report. John Dunshay can come forward to talk to this. I'm going to suggest actually, Chris Darby, you might like to move the recommendations and Pipacoom second it.
I think Pipacoom is actually the appropriate one to move.
Okay, we'll do it the other way around. Moved by Pipacoom, if you're happy with that. Seconded by Councillor Darby, both of whom are members of the City Centre Advisory Board. And it's a noting the advice in the report. John, the floor is yours.
Morena Mayor Phil, it's a pleasure to be here this morning at this inaugural meeting of the governing body, the new governing body. This report actually deals with the activities of the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board over the last term. The next report will deal with the setting up of the City Centre Advisory Board and other sector and advisory panels for the next term. The Auckland City Centre Advisory Board is a sector panel enabling city centre stakeholders to advise on how the city centre targeted rate is spent, and also advising on plans and strategies that impact on the city centre. The City Centre Advisory Board is particularly important at the moment because of the scale of investment within the city centre. I'm going to take the report as read and proceed to run through the presentation. The first slide, for those who aren't already read, just shows the boundary of where the City Centre Advisory Board activities are located, and more particularly where the City Centre targeted rate is collected from. That's the red line. You can see that the annual collection is 22.8 million, and you'll also see that the targeted rate is collected from both businesses and also about 5% from residents. Those are the terms of reference and the previous City Centre Advisory Board members. It's important to note that whilst we've talked about City Centre targeted rate, I also refer to the fact that the Advisory Board provides a lot of advice on plans and strategies that affect the city centre, and you'll see some of those up there. And that also, it covers not only CapEx but OpEx. So you'll see that in terms of some of the public arts work, but also in terms of the work that's been done around homelessness. Again, if you look at the variety of things that have, where the City Centre Advisory Board has been active over the last term, they cover both OpEx and CapEx areas. Homelessness, we've already seen on the previous slide. They maintain an active interest in the cleaning and maintenance of the city centre and work closely with community facilities in that space. And also, more recently, they've been looking at public amenities and where they're located around city centre. They've played a significant role in championing good public urban realm outcomes around targeted rate developments. They're very active in promoting and supporting development response. They're a key stakeholder in terms of advising on the concepts of the Victoria Street Lydia Park, which is currently going through the business case process. And they've also been involved in terms of ensuring that the America's Cup legacy provides what is intended. And also, of course, there's a significant amount of investment that has been undertaken in downtown, and in addition to contributing a significant amount of the targeted rate, they're also advise and are consulted on the concepts for that downtown public realm work. We've put that slide up. I suppose the main reason for that is because it shows the spread of city centre targeted rate projects across the city centre. At some stage there was some concern that the targeted rate was being spent largely around the northern end of town, particularly in the downtown, but that shows that over the period of the city centre targeted rate, or actually not the whole period, but the period for which we have most accurate records, there's quite a wide spread through the city centre of projects. Again, that shows the same thing, but you'll see that the green bars at the bottom show that the actual spend of the target rate has fallen away over the last few years, and particularly last year, but that there will be a catch-up over the next 2 or 3 years where the targeted rate spend goes up to $50-odd million a year, and we'll catch up on, and that money will come from targeted rate unspent to date. One of the significant pieces of work that's been done over the last year or 18 months was a review of the targeted rate and the portfolio of projects on which the targeted rate should be spent. That was a good process. We went through between staff and Auckland City Centre Advisory Board members. That shows the process we went through, and I'll now ask Jenny Larking, who's here with me, and is Head of City Centre Programs, to run through that.
Good morning. So over the next 7 years or so, there will be over $200 million of city centre target rates invested in the city centre. And this body of work, as John mentioned, has been collated in collaboration with the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board and following their advice in terms of what is important for the city centre. It plays a very important role in the revitalisation of the city centre. So the colour coding in green shows the city centre target rate funded projects. The dark purple shows the general rate funded projects, and the light purple shows the extent of the private sector investment in the city centre. The rate funds capital projects as well as operational activities. So I'm just going to very quickly take you through some of the notable projects that are underway. So one of the projects is the Federal Street program. It seeks to create a pedestrian priority laneway circuit, walking routes along the full length of Federal Street. Stage 2 is being developed in collaboration with the City Mission Home Ground and creates a shared space between Wellesley Street and Muriel Drive, as well as significant improvement to the green corridor and water quality in that street. Stage 3 and 4 again is an extension of the laneway circuit that is currently in design, and we'll be looking at opportunities to link in with the future stage of the City Centre Master Plan development and improvement on servicing and accessing in these areas. For those of you who had a chance to have a look at High Street recently, we have a series of temporary intervention on High Street that seeks to innovatively engage with community in terms of the change and creating biodiversity and health and safety improvements in this street. Alongside the trials and temporary intervention, we'll be developing the design work for the permanent upgrade that's coming in future years, seeking learnings and engagement with the community through this trial process. The Nelson Street Slip Lane project is a project that responds to the concerns of the residential population in the area. So in the Victoria Quarter area is one of the densest population in New Zealand, and where this project will respond to the safety concerns and the quality of the street environment in that area. The K Road Enhancement Project, construction has just started in that area. It seeks to establish a cycleway and a green link through the K Road project. So it completes a significant cycle network that's part of the Auckland Transport cycling network. It will increase the number of trees and rainwater treatment on that street and create an enhanced pedestrian environment for the street. Myers Park upgrade is an enhancement of the Myers Park entrance. This area has been a significant area of concern for safety and aesthetic, and creates in the future an accessible entrance into the Myers Park. That's quite a crucial part for the growing residential population in the city centre. And some of the other urban realm contribution that the city centre target rate contributes to is the creation of public space. So Lower Queen Street is where the City Rail Link project will reinstate once they've completed their work, and it'll be reinstated into a public plaza. So the Key Street project that John has mentioned, the targeted rate is part funding the enhancement of that. It will create a enhanced urban realm and pedestrian friendly space for the very high level of commuters that will be in the area. And we're also working to enhance the pedestrian environment in the Bridmark precinct alongside the accessibility of the new City Rail Link stations.
Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, John and Jenny. That's a great presentation, and it's great to see the progress that's being made there. Can I just throw in the first question? Quite a lot during the campaign, I got people saying that Auckland Council was far too centred on and spent too much on the centre city. And I pointed out that, 22 million plus of that a year was coming from a special targeted rate that the businesses and the residents had raised themselves. But I'm imagining with the property value in that area, that the actual contribution to overall rates in the city is very high. Do you have any estimation of what percentage of normal rates comes out of that area? It's the highest value property, obviously, in Auckland, so it's maybe if you haven't got that, maybe if you could come back to us on that. I just think that when people say that we're too city centre centric, they need to acknowledge not just the 200,000 people coming in each day, but the huge amount of funding that's raised in this area. That's 20% of our GDP. Question, Councillor Darby.
I roughly know the answer to that, but the worst answer is from a politician. But I understand from our meetings of the advisory board that the rate, and there's multiple rates, of course, in the city centre, are drawing a revenue of somewhere, but over the next 10 years, between 1.2 and I think almost as high as $1.5 billion. And effectively, the revenue from the city centre will actually, there's a very healthy surplus, and it subsidises, as it should, many parts of Auckland. It's not being all spent in the city centre. But thank you for the report, our first report. In some ways, this is a procedural report, but it's very important. Can I suggest that the note recommendation, in some ways that's retrospective, it's rear view mirror, and we have been noting their advice for the last 3 years, but can I maybe just suggest a change there, that we note the advice and the recommendations and go through to comma after the term and thank the members for their significant contributions, after the comma term, after the word term. Just, John and Jenny, can you tell me, I couldn't bring up our online facility has changed, and I can't bring up the last City Centre Advisory Board minutes and agendas. Has this report, as it is written, is this the product of a recent meeting of the board?
In terms of the project and the contribution of those, where the projects are spent, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you just tell me, and just due to the
Microphone, please, Chris.
Of the last few months, I know that one of their most recent meetings was cancelled, wasn't it? Was that the September meeting? So we're going back to August. Can you tell me, in terms of these major projects, and if I take High Street, for example, the trial, or Access for Everyone, High Street, I thought Access for Everyone, there were two parts to the trial. there was the High Street trial, and then we moved to the Queen Street trial. Would I be correct in that I'm anticipating, we can all anticipate, a lower Queen Street trial at some time, customs to maybe Shortland
But
or
there is
Victoria?
I guess there is a bigger program of work in terms of the, I guess, the emerging Access for Everyone strategy in the city centre as part of the city centre master plan refresh. So the High Street trial will inform and provide some of the data just to inform the Access for Everyone strategy. We haven't confirmed the exact location of the next tranche of trials as yet, but we're working with closely with Auckland Design Office in terms of identifying locations and data sets that we require to inform and that will roll out a program of trials over the next few years.
And also with that Auckland Transport.
Yeah, so through the election, as the Mayor's just referring, we've heard a lot, and we've heard a lot in the last 2 weeks, just really excited about the High Street trial. And it is the next question that comes out of people's mouths is, when are you doing Queen Street?
Yep.
So, or at least part of Queen Street. So you're saying that there is scope within Access for Everyone, the pilots, learn from High Street, and then the physical project of High Street, the reconstruction of High Street comes out of that, and then the thinking can be applied to Queen Street.
Yes, it can be applied to Queen Street. Yeah.
And it is likely to be in front of the advisory board to progress something on Queen Street in the next 12 months. Sorry, I'm being ambitious here. One of the new members said we're going to be bold this term.
We will definitely bring a program of work for the advisory board to consider, and then we'll, I guess, seek their advice on where is the most appropriate tranche of trials.
Councillor, I think the purpose of the trial for High Street was to learn our lessons from that and use that as the basis for business cases going forward for a program of work across the city centre. Given the fact that there's an enormous amount of investment and capital works going on in the city centre over the next few years, I think the intention is that we consider that work as work in pulling together the program for A4E, and that where the capital works are being undertaken will inform where we start our A4E projects, and that will have to take into account consultation with AT as well, and how any works might impact on public transport movements and bus movements and things like that. So we will be taking something to the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board with respect to continuing to roll out A4E across the city centre, but we have to take into account how that will impact on the operation of the city centre.
One last one. The learnings that we take, what we get to find out about High Street, how do we convey that to beyond the city centre? How can we apply that to the consideration of how we might create better environments in local centres all around Auckland?
So we'll be sharing our learnings from the city centre and our engagement approach and the community co-design process with our colleagues through the council group, and I guess encourage them to use that opportunities to apply it to the regions.
Thanks, Jeff.
Councillor Walker.
I don't think it's any secret that we've got a lot of businesses in the area that's covered by this targeted rate that are really hurting. The Albert Street businesses are obvious, but if you look around a whole lot of streets, you've got immense disruption that's being caused through things that are happening in the private sector in terms of construction, but also obviously public sector. And I hope that there's going to be some compensation for Albert Street businesses, and obviously the council should have some involvement in that process. But equally, I'm mindful that we almost need a rescue package for many businesses that are in the centre city. I'm not necessarily talking about something financial, but when I've travelled to other cities, I've seen many things that those cities do to embrace what's happening and really work with the businesses. So I'm just putting to you that certainly on my part, that's a real high priority, and even though I'm not on the particular group that's here, I think that it concerns all councillors. So it would be great to have some feedback on that particular issue. And the other issue that I think came up at a governing body meeting or a meeting that I was on not so long ago was a Dockline tram and the opportunity to take that across to Quay Street and have enhanced mobility, the tourism aspects of that. That's something that I'm interested in as a councillor, and I'd certainly appreciate some reporting back on that. Thank you.
Councillor, just in terms of the compensation, I can't comment on that. I don't.
Maybe I can help, John. I had discussions last week with the Minister of Transport, mindful of the letter given to me by a number of councillors about the exceptional hardship being suffered by some small businesses on Albert Street, and you're aware of the position that I took, which was that there should be a fund closely targeted to those that were affected in a way that really damaged their survival. It took some time to get the government across the line, but the government has come across the line, and the CRLL are now in the process of drawing up a plan which will involve a capped fund and probably a way of allocating that funding by an independent person, but working on the basis of exceptional hardship caused by the extended time the contract had taken to deliver. The government is looking at the wider sphere of disruption caused right across the country. Obviously, if your terms of reference and your criteria were too wide, you'd be talking about huge sums of money. But this money will be drawn from the existing contingency fund of CRL and won't come as an extra impost on the Auckland ratepayer or the taxpayer. So that hopefully helps you on that side of it. But John, you might like to talk about the Dockland tram.
Well, just firstly, Mayor Phil, in terms of the general point about development response, that's a very topical, for want of a better word, issue as well. So yes, some of the lessons from Albert Street have been taken on board. CRL have put in place a development response approach. There's a very proactive development response approach up at K Road, and there has for some time been a development response team down on the downtown project, and work is being done at Pleasant to bring together all those separate development response approaches into a cohesive approach to development response across the city centre. In terms of a waterfront tram, I can't comment on that at this stage. At the moment, there is significant investment being undertaken in that area. That will take some time to, that will be completed over the next 2 or 3 years, in addition to the CRL. And at the moment, I'm not able to comment beyond those works.
That's great, Mr. Mayor. I think in terms of the larger context, and again, I don't pretend to know too much, but the recent events around Sky City have also actually added to the impact on businesses. That's certainly been my observation in talking to businesses and the like. So it's really tough right now, and I just think that there's an opportunity for council to put something together that goes to this, because it's really significant, and our ability to respond to something like Sky City or the like in terms of the impact on businesses, movement of pedestrians and the like, I think is a bit of a wake-up call, and I don't think that we've woken up yet.
Sorry, Councillor.
I would like
this is a
some
question
kind of-
session, and
So
I've got a couple of other people wanting to
I
ask
guess
questions.
what I'm saying is I don't need it right now, but I think we've had some massive events recently that we need some reporting to us on in terms of how we've responded to those events, but also how we're going to respond to future events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Worship, and tēnā kōrua. Look, I just wanted to have a look. I've gone through the PowerPoint and listened to it. Where are the recommendations from the advisory, the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board, that are asking us to do anything? Because when I read A, it's got note the advice and recommendations provided. So I'm trying to find out what they want from us, if there are any recommendations, and whether I can have a look at them. Because I'm looking through the, sorry John, but let's look through the PowerPoint. It gives you updates on the, Myers Park underpass and everything else. It's just to say, look, here are the objectives, here are the key risks, but they're not sort of saying, hey, we want more money or we're going to do this. So are there any recommendations that have come out of the report from there? And if so, what are they?
Councillor, there aren't any recommendations. It is a report on the work of the Auckland City Centre Advisory Board over the past term, and particularly how the targeted rate has been spent and what other work has been done. In terms of dealing with further requests for how money might be spent or recommendations on how money might be spent, those are taken to the Finance and Performance Committee, and the Finance Performance Committee approves that and has approved the City Centre targeted rate revised program as shown here.
I think maybe in light of that answer, Councillor Darby, I'd just like to, if we took out the and recommendations, so it's advice and thank the board members, I think that would be appropriate given
Want me to
the answer.
clarify?
Sorry?
They have, this is about a 3-year term. It's not about today. It's not about advice and recommendations today. It's looking at, this is a report of the 3-year term. And it's about that period, and it's about acknowledging the advice and recommendations that have been brought over the 3-year term. The Planning Committee has received extensive advice. The Finance Committee has received recommendations on the targeted rate.
Yeah, I think the problem I still have is that I don't have the recommendations in front of me, so I can't note what those recommendations are. I can note the advice that we've received here. I don't think it's a big deal. It's only a noting report, but it'd be better take on board that you're no doubt absolutely true that they have made recommendations, but unless we've got it built into the report we have in front of us, it's hard for us to note it. I think that was Councillor Filipaina. So if you don't mind, if we just...
I'm happy to take it out.
Okay,
If
thank
you
you.
were true to that, you'd take out the word advice, because we don't have their advice for us of the last 3 years either. But look, just let's move on. Take the word and recommendations out. But they have been.
No, that's good. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Watson.
Just a specific question on one of the projects, the entry to Myers Park, which seems to have been around for a number of years now. There has been some inquiries by some of the property owners there as to the timing and the potential disruption of that project. And sorry, I didn't quite pick it up in your fly through. Is it still at the planning stage, or is there a definitive start date and a time of construction that we can go back to these people with?
It is at the planning stage, and during the planning stage we'll be, as the design evolve, we'll be in contact with all of the surrounding property owners to keep them updated of the anticipated construction and disruptions.
Thank you. Are there any comments? If not, I'll move... Sorry, there are comments. Councillor Coombe. Oh.
Kia ora. So I still just had a question about the report, if that's okay, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you for the report. I just would like to, it's great to see some of the projects that have been around for a long time finally coming through, like the Myers Park underpass has been going since 2011. So I really hope we can nail it in the next year. I did have a question about Quay Street enhancement and whether there's been any further update on extending the enhancement further along Quay Street. or is it still the same package of work that was advised last term?
It is, so currently the Key Street Enhancement Project goes from Hobson Street through to, I think, Commerce Street. There is no further funding to extend it any further than its current scope.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Oh, it might be small in the scale of things in terms of budgets, but I want to congratulate the advisory board on addressing homelessness, the 2.6 million, the upgrade of the James Liston Hostel, and the 600,000 for the outreach programme. I think that's an extraordinary commitment, so it's just great to see. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Hills.
It was just a brief comment. Are we on to comment?
Yeah, we're on to comment now.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a brief comment. This is fantastic, but we will obviously be ramping up a whole lot more the next 3 years. I think there are a huge number of projects which are coming together, and the Key Street and Waterfront area are significant to that. I do hope that we move faster or see more work on the linear park. I know people are waiting desperately for that, and I think although it was extremely unfortunate, the closures around Wellesley and other areas because of the convention centre fire showed, within a couple of days how behaviour change and actually prioritising buses and people to the areas they need to be actually did change that area because we were forced to. So there is some ways around, and what Key Street has done too, that the significant change around traffic through there, obviously not at first, but long term. The other thing, I was at a Women in Urbanism meeting last night, and I know we talk about it a lot, but I think we need to be ensuring that all our projects, especially in the city centre or the first leg, last leg around public transport, we're looking more at safety and more at well-lit spaces. I know last year we had a problem outside the courts, which took us 6 months just to get lights in that area, but when construction is happening, when things are moving, when we have large hoardings, I'd love to see a lot more thought given to all people. And I know the teams are doing an amazing job at that, but sometimes it's not quite there. And someone with a disability or someone who might feel afraid to be walking at night at 9 or 10 o'clock and everything has changed and it's much darker, and it can be quite overwhelming for people. So I think when we're doing this rapid change, and it's fantastic and exciting, but we need to keep people safe. And also it only takes a couple of times for people to have a bad experience to never want to walk down there. They jump in their car, they'll park outside the city or taxi and spend a whole lot more money because of the safety around. So I think there's fantastic amount of work being done, but I think we need to make sure we're keeping on top of that the whole way through, so our city is accessible during this time, but also in the future. So thank you so much. This is a really exciting piece of work, and I thank everyone who's been involved with it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comment, I'll put the resolution, but just to congratulate the team on what's happened in High Street. The picture you put up on High Street showed just how appalling the congestion is, both on the road and the pedestrian area. And going down there with Councillor Coombe and Darby, all of the feedback was really positive about the changes that were being made, and it's great to see us move forward in that direction. So the resolution's moved by Pippa Coombe, seconded by Chris Darby. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. We come now to